Hey everyone, Alex here. I recently saw this article from the New York Times which stated that tech is dying and the state of the industry is just completely bleak for new grads, and it really gave off this sense of doomerism and hopelessness. I wanted to spend a bit of time today talking about this and share my perspective as an engineer and product manager who's worked in big tech for almost 10 years at this point, and kind of explore whether this is true or whether this is a little bit hyperbolized. Let's get into it. I'm going to share my perspective of what I'm seeing in the industry today and what you can do if you're someone who's struggling, or maybe a new grad who's having a difficult time getting any interviews or callbacks. Please note that these are all my own opinions and don't necessarily reflect the opinions of any companies I've worked at. So to quickly recap the New York Times article, it basically highlights the mounting difficulties that new grads or job seekers are facing in the tech industry today. It implies that AI is really taking away these jobs and it's causing these widespread tech layoffs. It shows that enrollment in computer science programs and universities has surged like never before. It says that there were over 170,000 graduates last year, which is more than double how many there were in 2014. But unemployment is quite high at 6.1% for CS grads. And it says, that's even higher than biology or art history majors. There are some personal stories in the article about graduates from computer science who only can get jobs at Chipotle, or another graduate who sent out 6,000 applications without getting any interviews. Now, the question is this normal, or are we in some new, never before seen state, some brave new world where AI is taking away all of the jobs, like the article implies? And in my opinion, having been in big tech for 10 years, this is complete nonsense. AI has certainly changed things and it's made certain tasks get done more quickly or certain people more efficient, but has it replaced entire roles? Absolutely not. I have not seen a single role that is fully replaced by AI. It makes people more efficient and more effective, but it does not get rid of them. It's like a tool similar to when the personal computer was first developed. The real problem, I think, that this article completely misses and glosses over is outsourcing or hiring of labor in lower wage countries or territories. And this is just an unfortunate economic reality of a globalized world. If you were a manager and you needed to hire someone to do work for you, and you had two options, one that paid 50% or required you to pay 50% as much versus one that was 100% as much, and they both could do a pretty comparable job, you'd probably pick the 50% one. And that's why a lot of jobs are going to Brazil, to India, to Eastern Europe, Poland, Tallinn, Czechia. I'm a Canadian and I'm even considered a good deal because similar roles to mine in the States will make 30 to 40% more just because they're working in the US compared to Canada. So the reality of how things are now in a globalized world is a lot of companies are moving offshore at these big companies. There's some other factors that have come in to play as well. When you can move these newer grad jobs offshore, that means that all of the sort of senior level jobs are the only ones that are going to be posted onshore. And I've seen this in my own case where at our company, a lot of the roles being posted right now in the US and Canada are only for senior roles. There aren't any junior roles being posted because those junior roles are being posted, for Eastern Europe or Brazil or Mexico or India. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize is there was an actual change to the US tax code in 2022, which is something called Section 174. It's basically this tax code related to research and development, where companies, when they hired a new software engineer, they could essentially deduct taxes immediately for the expenses that they paid, to hire that person for their salary. And this changed in 2022, where you had to actually amortize that over, I think it was 5 years for domestic and 15 years for international. But what that means is that the tax deductions you get for hiring is less. And you're going to hire less when you have, tax benefits that have reduced. So a lot of US companies kind of scaled back their hiring after COVID. Now, it's worth noting that this has changed recently with Trump's big, beautiful bill. So there may be some alleviation of this in the near future, but that came in 2022 right as COVID was happening. And the third thing, which I'll obviously mention, is there was just a dramatic surge of hiring during COVID. Companies were hiring software engineers like crazy because interest rates were low compared to now. The demand for these software products was massive. Everyone was on their computer, on the internet all the time. And a lot of companies, unfortunately, overhired. So what we're seeing now isn't necessarily a terrible, bleak state, but it's really just a regression to the mean, where companies don't need to hire for a couple years because they hired so much in 2020 and 2019. The other thought that a lot of people don't really consider is that tech is, and always will be, in my opinion, a very cyclical industry. You can ask any parent who works in tech, who was alive and worked during the dot-com bubble, whether that was worse or this was worse. And everyone I've talked to so far has said that the dot-com boom and bust was a lot worse than what we're seeing right now. I remember being an intern working at Broadcom, which is this massive software company. And one of the older engineers there told me that during the dot-com boom, he was being chauffeured from meeting to meeting with customers in a limo, and there would be champagne in the back of the limo just for him to go to a work meeting. And he said he went from doing that one week to the next week, his entire department, thousands of people being laid off, and him not being able to find a job for, I think he said, 3 years. And this was a very senior, high-performing, high-caliber engineer. We're not seeing that nowadays. We're seeing it being a tough market for new grads, but senior developers and senior engineers are still kind of having their pick of the litter, so to say. COVID was one of those peak times in this cyclical nature. Companies hired like crazy, and I think new grads got sort of unrealistic expectations. You would hear stories of graduates in 2022 or 2020 getting $200,000 job offers at Google, at Facebook, with really no experience and no justification for being paid that much. And I think that kind of caused a lot of hype and people to go into computer science thinking that that would be the norm and you'd still be able to get a $200,000 job today. Well, that's not the norm, and I don't think that should be expected at all. And I think those unrealistic expectations have unfortunately caused things to be a little bit more difficult now too. It's really not a major computer science that should be picked if you have zero passion for it and you're just chasing the money. So as a new graduate, what can you do? Well, I'll try to give you some of my advice and things that I've seen help people and new grads get hired at my company or companies that I've worked at in the past. The first thing you can do is really get your resume polished. The resume is the first thing that any hiring manager is going to see. And if you have, typos in it, if you have sentences that don't really make sense, or duplicated information, or formatting issues, that unfortunately almost immediately writes you off. So share it with your family and friends. Make sure you've got a second set of eyes on it. Really read through it yourself. Make sure that all of your bullet points have an impact statement. What did you do to actually contribute to that bullet point? And it can be tough as a new grad. You might not have a lot of experience that you can put on there, but you can still put projects on there, things you've worked on in school, things that you can actually confidently talk about during an interview. Because if you get past that, first resume stage, they're going to want to ask you questions about your interview. And if you can't talk, concisely, intelligently about the things that you worked on, it's going to drive a little bit of suspicion into the hiring manager's mind about whether you actually worked on that. And unfortunately, a lot of graduates nowadays don't have the skills that they're putting on their resume. And I think that makes it really hard for them to get a job because we can immediately flush out whether you know what you're talking about or you don't. So spend some time on your resume, get a second set of eyes on it. The next thing you can really do as a new grad is to target, smaller, less prestigious companies. You don't have to get into Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google as your very first company. Almost no one I know at those companies did that. They often worked at a smaller local company for a few years, got that experience under their belt, and then decided to interview more after that. So the other benefit is if you target local companies with a lot of the return to office mandates, it actually makes you a stronger candidate because you're no longer competing with this global pool of people from Europe, Asia, Africa. You're just dealing with a pool of candidates, in a local region. So that's actually a big plus for you as a new grad. The next thing is to do interview prep. The best thing I did for my job interviews was to do practice with my friends and family. Get them to ask you a question, get them to ask you, about a time that you struggled with something so you can come up with a story that you can tell hiring managers. It'll make you more confident, it'll make you a better speaker, and it'll make you perform way better in interviews. That's the number one tip I give to new grads. Do mock interviews. Get off of Reddit and social media. Get off of YouTube. Stop watching videos like this. Or at least avoid doomerism content as much as you can because it's so flush right now and it's so easy to get clicks with that kind of content when, as we've kind of talked about, I think the reality is a little bit different. Life is too finite and precious, for you to destroy yourself on the grind and trying to get that big tech job that you've always wanted right out of school. When you're older, you're not going to look back and be disappointed that you took, 6 months to a year in your early 20s to find something or that you graduated in a tough time and you didn't work harder. Give yourself some grace. Keep trying to work at it every day, but consistency will beat out all of your efforts all in a short term. So just to summarize, as someone in big tech right now who's been in big tech for a long time, I promise you there are still jobs out there. AI is not taking everything away and causing the layoffs. There are some challenges with offshoring that will make things more difficult. But on the same hand, we've seen a lot of companies move to return to office mandates, which makes things easier for you as a new grad. Give yourself some grace. In my opinion, the pendulum will always swing back eventually. So hope this video was useful, and see you later.